Hare Krishna. Welcome to the Soul Ashraya podcast. I am Bhakti Jake, and I am joined here by my good friend and teacher, Balaram Shakti Das. And we are going to have a show today. We are going to read through the Krishna book and yeah, it should be good.
Haribol.
Yes. Good.
Okay.
Yes, are you there?
Yeah, I got booted off somehow.
Oh.
Okay. I don't know what happened.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. It went completely dark, and then I was wondering what happened to you. Yeah. All right, so Hare Krishna, we are here live. We are going to start with some invocations, which I think we could really use right now. We could use them now and at any time, really. So, Balaram, if you could start us off with our invocations, and I would just go right through them, and I'm just going to pray along with you.
Okay. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Jnana-timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhakti-vedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Vanchakalpatrubhyascha Kripa Sindhubheva Patitanam Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare.
Jai. Thank you so much. Thank you for taking the time to be here today with us. I'd like to thank all the viewers too. How was your week so far? Pretty good?
Yeah, my week has been quite transformative, actually. It's been something of a kind of return to grace. Yeah, I was really struggling, with my mind and so forth, and just like one thing after another. Really, actually, just having the great fortune to speak with other devotees and or talk to people about Krishna and speaking Krishna Katha, and we'll be talking actually about just that in a minute here. We're speaking the absolute truth, And this was something that I heard this week. What was that? Just if you simply speak the truth, you know, you'll always be safe. I think there's more to what the person was saying. I don't remember who it was that I heard that from. It was probably Kirtaneshwar, actually. But that's really, it's this whole show is about soul Ashraya, right? Taking shelter or finding refuge. And yeah, it was pretty much sums up my week, and we had just Thursday, we had the Narsingha festival.
Yeah.
On that special holy day. And it was like so many forces in my life were kind of coinciding with that day, through the week, leading me to a real, revival and renewal of the spirit, and feeling myself sheltered and actually, in full consciousness taking the shelter. But yeah, the idea is that, the mind will try to tell us so many things. And so we have to constantly be speaking the truth, which means speaking to ourselves and speaking to others. And, if we're doing one, we'll do the other, right? So just speaking Krishna Katha or speaking about Krishna, you're speaking what you've heard from authoritative sources, right? Like these literatures, other devotees, and what it's doing for the consciousness, it's instilling spiritual intelligence, which means truth, right? You're speaking what is true, not something that you've concocted, or that, much less something that your mind is trying to cheat you, into thinking or saying, right? And that just causing disturbances. But if we simply, speak the truth, we'll actually be very happy. I think that was the point that Kirtaneshwar said, if that's who that was, that you'll be very happy. We think, no, I need to do this or control that, because that's where my happiness is. And yeah, and we'll be talking about that as well, in the upcoming paragraphs on Rasa Theory, which I'm very excited to have an opportunity to speak on today.
Yeah.
And hear about.
Yes. So this was my first Narasingha experience, Naramasa, right? I mean, you can tell.
Narasingha.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah, so Nara means human or person, and Singha means lion. So half man, half lion avatar.
Yeah.
Of the Lord, yeah.
Which this avatar seems to be everybody's favorite. It's like, I don't know if it is just because of it seems like it's got a strong presence in popular culture. There's that famous painting, that they use for like album covers and t-shirts and everything. I'm pretty sure that was done by a Prabhupada devotee. Uh, I'm not sure who. I know it's a woman. I'm not sure what her name is. But the popularity of, I don't know if you would call it a holiday, or just an appearance day is what we would call it, right? So the story and the appearance day and the whole thing so this was my first time, and it seems like when you enter into this Krishna consciousness, the the first images that you see are of Naramisa, you know, and you think, wow, that's really cool. I want to do that. Like, I want to get involved in that. That looks like a cool thing, you know. Like, but it's just funny how, yeah, it's a cool thing, but there is so much to it as far as the story of Prahlad and everything. And there's so much to it that I was just excited to like know what it is. And this was the first one that I actually like knew the stories and the concept behind. So I was just excited about that, you know. And
Yeah.
so many of these new holidays,
Cool.
so many holidays and so many things happening, you know. And so this was the first one that I knew what it was all about. I wasn't really able to go out anywhere and celebrate it because of my schedule and work and everything, but I know that this was one of the bigger ones, you know, probably top 3 or top 4 maybe. So yeah.
Yeah, I'd say it's up there. You know, and this is something very wonderful about Christian consciousness is that every year your understanding deepens, your knowledge base broadens, and you're able to appreciate on a much deeper level, and you relish more. And that's occurs on, you know, various levels. There's various levels, actually all levels, all facets of these stories are very wonderful and relishable for the soul. You know, when we say relish, it means, you know, it's a source of enjoyment and also a source of nourishment, a source of satisfaction. And you know, the Lord, He has all of these various leelas, you know, these transcendental stories and activities that are serving these sort of multiple functions of both nourishing us and captivating our minds and our hearts, and actually really drawing us into His world. You know, so the Bhagavad Gita mentions that, it states that if one janma karma cha me divyam evam yo veti tattvataha, that if one simply knows the details or the tattva of my birth and activities, my janma and karma, appearance and activities of the Godhead, then that person will never take birth again, but he comes to my supreme abode. So that's a very wonderful thing. And yeah, it's like through the year, you know, just like the church has its liturgical year, right? Is that what they call it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Like you go through, you know, Lent, Advent, Christmas, Easter, all those things. Don't ask me what order those go in. But it's actually, I was reading a book several years back. This is when I first came into Christian consciousness. I was reading several Christian books that were very very edifying for me. And it was a monk who was speaking, and he was talking about, I just remember it kind of really you know, stayed with me, that the passage of the year, it's like a cycle. You know, time is cyclical, right? It means like at each station in that circle, there's an opportunity to go deeper, and it's really bringing you into the narrative of the soul returning to God, right? And at every step, there's an opportunity to deepen in that inner world, that narrative of the soul actually. So that's one level of the meditation of these leelas. And then of course learning the details, learning the names, being able to pronounce the names.
Yeah, all of it.
That helps as well, because then it's like you've got the whole picture, and then you're going deeper into the details, and it's all just amazing and enlightening actually.
It really is. I have to say that it's amazing, enlightening, exciting. It's all of those things. It's so wild that there's so many great holidays. I mean, if you want to call them holidays,
So many. Yeah.
events
All the time,
all
it's like
the time.
all the time.
It's definitely going to have one a month. You can count on that. And just
Yeah.
to be coming into it is pretty cool. It's exciting for sure. And so
Yeah.
not only was it Narasimha, but I'm pretty sure that we are coming up on the exact 1 year mark of Krishna consciousness for Bhakti Jake. Yeah. I remember that I got my Bhagavad Gita in the mail back in April of 2022, but I don't think I had actually gone to any meetings or actually bothered to do anything with it until about this very time. And I remember talking to someone, and Narasimha had just happened. So it's about exactly a year. So to put that into context, for people who are new to Krishna consciousness, which I want this podcast to really be kind of helping people so they don't, so to make it kind of easy, because I just have, I mean, it is easy, but there's just such a hunger and a need, I think, for people, to want to learn about all of these things. And the way I think about Krishna consciousness is like this: it's like a giant machine. Okay, it's a part of a religious system that you can see as a way bigger machine, but it's like in that machine is other little machines, and you get to just poke around and see what this does and what that does. And every time you poke around, something else happens, and you learn more and more and more. And so it's going to be literally never ending. It's going to be your life. You've had lives, and now you're going to live more and more and more. This is just the beginning of your realization of Krishna. Just started. So for people who are new out there, I wanted to let you know that this is so exciting. It's a giant machine that is never going to run out of buttons for you to push.
Nice.
Yeah. So, okay.
Yeah.
You want to?
It's like a fractal. I would, it's what it's reminding. What you're saying is remind me of, fractal. You look at one piece, one part, and it just blows up into its own fractal, which kind of leads me to the concept of an image or like a portrait. This idea is really helpful, that because you're saying you're going to live many lives, like, well, we should understand that that if we're looking at the material dramas and history, and our little stories, that will lead to perpetual lifetimes, because we're missing out on the image of the soul. The soul is the image of God, right? And so that's the internal, the real world. That's the real image. Whereas what we're seeing with our eyes is an illusory image, right? That's what the scriptures are telling us. Don't build your house on sand. that once the tide comes in, it'll just sweep it off. So this body, this lifetime, it's like that. We think, oh, I need to boost my, self-image, out in the world, because that's my life. It's like, well, that's a life, but it's, you can analyze that in so many ways. It's not going to bring you, even if it brings you happiness and fulfillment and satisfaction, it's not perfect. It's never perfect, and we'll discuss that later. And B, it's temporary. At death, you have to let it go, and that is very painful for most people.
Yeah.
But the real life is internal, and so every religious path is giving you a window into that. And so that window, it's like a frame of a portrait that God has painted actually for your soul, or let's say woven, like a tapestry, right? That's the word I use. Yeah. So tapestry, it's, the whole thing is just wonderfully woven, but if you turn it around, I don't know if I have anything woven inside, anyway, within reach. If you turn around, it's just a bunch of chaotic colors, threads, just all, and that's like your little lifetime is, or the things that happen, let's say, within your lifetime, or within however many lifetimes, you're just moving one way, and then another line comes in and just takes you out, right? You're like, oh, why'd that happen? It's like, well, you're just seeing the backside of the reality. It's beyond the material energy. How God is arranging everything. Everything is working in perfect divine order, but because we're looking at the wrong side, we're not seeing it. So the Lord's Leela and the Lord's Katha, chanting the holy name of God, connecting with Krishna consciousness means you're turning it around. And it's a total about face of life, actually, that you have to do. You have to abandon, the material life. Yeah. Doesn't mean you don't engage with it, because you're still going to engage with it. As a servant of God, you're going to be involved in those same threads, but you're going to be looking at them in the real perspective. You're going to see the big picture. You will have perfect knowledge. That's desirable. Then you will never die. You won't actually ever die, because your consciousness is seeing the real image. How could death be a part of it? Death is just when you're not seeing the real image, and you're getting caught up in these small, mundane stories, which have a beginning and an end. And yeah, we'll talk more about that with Rasa Theory as well. Yeah, Jai. Yeah. Did you want to say something else, or start?
No, that I will just say that is also a very good analogy. That really brought back a memory of when we went to the Rochester Museum of Art years ago. This is so wild. In the museum, they have a tapestry from a medieval castle that is probably 20 feet tall by like 20 feet wide. It's from a castle, so it's huge, right? And it is literally woven like that much work into these giant woven tapestries. It is amazing. And I love that analogy, because aren't all of our lives woven in? And yeah. I mean that's got to be one of the best analogies I've ever heard for spiritual life, for wanting to live a spiritual life, is things being woven in. And the importance of it's wild, because tapestry.
Yeah, and you see how everyone's connected. Actually, we feel that has to be true, but you can actually see it.
Yes, yeah. And there's the fact that they're beautiful, but they also serve a purpose, and the purpose is actually to provide insulation, because of the castle walls were like stone, cold stone. That's why they made it so big. is because not only it was like a beautiful work of art, and it also kept in all the heat. Guy. Well, if you want to start getting into the nectar, I'll let you read first if you like.
Yeah.
I can read first.
Yeah. Maybe I'll read and just, so I have my bookmark at the top of XVI. We were talking about watering the root of the tree, and that's really, what we were just talking about. You're nourishing the root means you're investing in the real image, the soul, spiritual life, instead of investing yourself in these temporary, concocted, reflections, the backside of the tapestry. You're not investing your energy there. It's like you can do that, and that might be nice. It's, God will still use that, but you're not conscious, and so you're going to be very frustrated. Ultimately, in the end, you're going to be frustrated because it's not the actual reality you thought it was, and so you have to let that go, but you'll be given something much greater. So ultimately, yeah, we're all meant to water the root of that tree, and then we can participate in that, the whole tapestry, not just our little corner of it. That's another thing. It's not like you just have your little branch, your little subsection, district whatever, district Balaram. No, I actually am equally, this is called unity consciousness, right? People say terms like this, right? Spiritual worlds, everything is, one. Doesn't mean there's no variety. Just look at a tapestry, there's a lot of variety there. 20 feet, that's, big time variety. But it's all part of one thing. It's all together. It all works together. Yeah, machine is also a good analogy for that. Okay, so the art of focusing one's attention on the Supreme and giving one's love to him is called Krishna consciousness. We have inaugurated the Krishna consciousness movement so that everyone can satisfy his propensity for loving others simply by directing his love toward Krishna. The whole world is very eager to satisfy the dormant propensity of love for others, but the various invented methods like socialism, communism, altruism, humanitarianism, and nationalism, along with whatever else may be manufactured for the peace and prosperity of the world, are all useless and frustrating because of our gross ignorance of the art of loving Krishna. Generally, people think that by advancing the cause of moral principles and religious rights, they will be happy. Others may think that happiness can be achieved by economic development, yet others think that simply by sense gratification they will be happy. But the real fact is that people can be happy only by loving Krishna. Yeah, so that's pretty much what we were just talking about. First thing, I was reading this morning, just before we started, from the Bhagavad Gita, which I like to read after breakfast. So I'm reading through the second chapter right now, and this verse came up, and I found it really in line with, what we're doing here. I mean, obviously everything is in line with what we're doing here, but particularly noteworthy, or anyway, it's chapter 2, verse 46, that says, all purposes served by a small well can at once be served by a great reservoir of water. Similarly, all the purposes of the Vedas can be served to one who knows the purpose behind them. So what Prabhupada is talking about in this paragraph are the different purposes that humanity pursues. And these are all included in the vast Vedic canon, of literature, right? The Vedas that's a very broad thing, right? There's a lot of books there, and it's broad because they include all purposes that humanity can execute, can endeavor in. Religiosity, economic development, sense gratification, liberation. Right? But there's then a fifth goal, and that is the real goal, and that's the purpose behind all the Vedas. What are these meant for? And Prabhupada explains they're meant to encourage a gradual development of self-realization. Right? And so all these things, it's not like Prabhupada isn't saying economic development, moral principles, religious rights are bad. He's saying they think by advancing these, they'll be happy. He's saying it's just in and of themselves, these things aren't going to make you happy because they're meant to serve a purpose. Like, the threads of a tapestry, they're not the end all be all. It's not like any one of them can say, I'm the real thing. No, you're meant to be a part of the whole. So, and then he's quoting from chapter 15, Vedais Chasarver Aham Eva Vedyo, meaning that he is the ultimate purpose or goal of the Vedas. So that means self-realization means understanding Krishna and one's eternal relationship with him. So yeah, that was very wonderful, very important concepts that if we know the purpose is to understand and act in our relationship with Krishna, then we have immediate access to that big picture spiritual life, real spiritual life, and we can start participating in that immediately. Right? There's no material requisite to that. It's not like you need to develop a certain something. No, you just go right for the goal, and when you do whatever you're already doing, so long as it's still serving the complete whole, it's valuable. It has value. Otherwise, again, its value might be temporary or incomplete.
Do you want to read some more, or do you want me to read?
Maybe you can read this next paragraph, and then I'll speak on that as well.
Okay.
Because this is a deep topic here. So go ahead.
Yeah. Krishna can perfectly reciprocate one's loving propensities in different relationships called mellows or rasas. Basically, there are 12 loving relationships. One can love Krishna as the supreme unknown and the supreme master, the supreme friend, the supreme child, the supreme lover. These are the 5 basic love rasas. One can also love Krishna indirectly in 7 different relationships, which are apparently different from the 5 primary relationships. All in all, however, if one simply reposes his dormant loving propensity in Krishna, then his life becomes successful. This is not a fiction, but is a fact that can be realized by practical application. One can directly perceive the effects that love for Krishna has on his life. Wow. Yeah. You want me to keep going, or do you want to?
Yeah, let me just break that down a little bit.
Yeah, please do, because I've been hearing about rasas, and honestly, I don't know what they are. I know everyone's talking about them, but I really don't know what it is,
Yeah. This is like the most concise paragraph on rasa like ever written. It's such a deep subject matter, and it's not something I'm going to get into, nor am I qualified because it goes, farther into depth of philosophical profundity and emotional beatitude than I can, than we can even imagine. It's about as deep a topic as it gets. But we should understand, because basically there's spiritual rasa and then there's material rasa. And rasa means taste, right? Or he's saying mellows, certain mood or flavor of love, you could say. And he's saying that if we simply repose this dormant loving propensity in Krishna, then life becomes successful and we can realize that. So, yeah, basically there are 12 loving relationships. So this is all explained in this book, Nectar of Devotion.
Yeah.
Original Sanskrit was written by Rupa Goswami, a medieval saint in India, medieval India, one of the most genius minds to ever live, and that's any scholar will tell you that. And he broke down the whole science, and so he categorized broke down the science of bhakti rasa. Actually, there are 5 topics that Lord Chaitanya, who is Krishna, kind of initiated him into, and that is Rasa Tattva, Krishna Tattva, Leela Tattva, Prema Tattva, and Bhakti Tattva. Not in that order. So all of those topics, Rupa Goswami is the preeminent expert for all of time, actually. Pretty amazing. So rasa, there's 5 primary relationships we can have with God, right? So do you know what those are?
The things that he had just mentioned here, these primary relationships here.
Yeah, he mentions them in here.
Yeah.
As the supreme unknown,
yes.
The supreme master, the supreme friend,
yes.
Right?
The
supreme child and supreme lover. So these are the ways that we can have relationship with God. And then there's 7 other rasas, but those aren't primary relationships. Those are just like, one of them is humor, chivalry. These are things that can arise in a friendly relationship. Like we have our, friendship relationship. And then, if one of us says something funny, then that humor, that mood, that mellow will come out, and then dissipate. So that's what he's saying there. So there are Bhaktivinoda Thakur explains, one of our spiritual masters in our line explains that there's 3 types of rasa. There's worldly or earthly, actually, literally. Swargaya, which means heavenly or celestial or subtle. Let's just say first is gross, second is subtle, and the third is spiritual. So the first 2 are material. They're of this world, and these are the types of taste, or the types of love that we have here. And so when people say I love this or I love you, they're talking about, it's like if they say I love chocolate. Okay, well, they're not having like a conjugal relationship with the chocolate, They just say they love it. So that's called earthly rasa. And then if it's I love you or I love Lucy, it's like that's this subtle. You're dealing with personalities here, but there's still material personalities. And then there's spiritual rasa, which is with Krishna. That's with God. And that's something that never ends. It's eternal and it's unlimited in its ability to give pleasure to the soul and fulfill the loving propensity. That is unlimited, whereas these other things are not. So, and then Rupa Goswami goes on to explain these other aspects in Rasa Theory that basically rasa, okay, and this is also interesting, tying right into our analogy, rasa is the canvas itself, and all of these, and that the canvas is the aggregate of all of the little paintings and figures within that canvas, and those are called bhavas. So bhava is just an emotion, particularly a spiritual emotion. So rasa is the aggregate of all of these different emotions we feel, and he breaks these into several categories. We have basically a prominent emotion, like attachment to the chocolate. It's like, what's your favorite thing? This. Okay, so that's your primary bhava. And then there's the cause. Like what is that feeling stimulated by? Well, the piece of chocolate itself, or the particular flavor of the chocolate. It's like, I like sweet milk chocolate. I don't like dark chocolate because that sugar, that's a stimulant. And then there's the activities associated with experiencing. It's not like love isn't just a static thing. Although in the first rasa, which is Krishna is a supreme unknown, that's that Shantaras, that's a neutral, you're not having actual engagement with Krishna, with God. But when it's Krishna, then it's pretty much guaranteed you're going to have some reciprocal activity with him. And so the activity, like the things that you do, it's like the nom nom nom, or eyes going back of the head, like these are anubhavas. These are things that anu needs to follow. So it's the things that follow the sentiment. And then there are other categories of things that support that rasa awakening, feelings that increase attachment. Someone was giving, this Swami was giving this example, explaining this, I was seeing the other day, of emotions you experience in different situations in a relationship. Like if it's so that's okay, chocolate. It's okay if someone steals your chocolate, like, no, like, right, this emotion comes up and that increases actually your attachment. So that's a gross material level. On a subtle level, we can see the same thing. You've got the hero or the heroine being the subject and object, and their particular mood is the prominent bhava. The cause is the object, the lover, or the beloved rather. The anubhava, the activity, maybe they sing to each other or dance or whatever. And then there are various things that support the rasa awakening, like the drama, intrigue, separation, union, and these sort of things. But Bhaktivinoda Thakur says, the same and spiritual rasa, it's the same feelings, it's the same emotions qualitatively. Friendship feels the same. It's a universal sort of thing, but it's unlimitedly broader spiritually, because material rasa, the object, is, he says, improper and unworthy. It's just like, it seems like a harsh blow. It's like, yeah, your girlfriend, bro, it's an improper place to put your love. That's one way of taking it, but that's not exactly what he's saying. We have to understand, if that's where we're reposing our love, ultimately we're going to be frustrated, because your girl's going to let you down. She's a fallible living entity, and eventually she's going to leave her body. And it's like, actually, you were probably more attached to her body and the fact that she was in that body for you to directly exchange with. Whereas Krishna, he never becomes embodied like that. He never enters that temporary sphere of activity. So it's eternal. All of the bhavas on the actual tapestry, all the paintings on the canvas, they're all eternal. you know, and saturated spiritually. Yeah, and it's not. He also adds that it's not a subject of rationale. It's not. Therefore, it's not something imaginary. It's not subject to, oh, just, you know, maybe Balaram and Jake are just making this stuff up, or maybe Prabhupada's just making this up. Actually, yeah, right. We were talking about that the other day. It's like maybe someone just really smart wrote all these books. It's like, well, no, it's not a product of the intellect or anything material. It's totally spiritual. And it means that you have to actually taste it yourself. It's not something that you can just take our word for it and then let it just be an object of your intellect. No, it's something you've got to enter in, you know, open up the jar of honey and, you know, participate in it. Then you'll taste it. And then you will automatically realize, wow, so this is the eternal. You'll experience that, actually. That's what all the scriptures are saying. You know, it's like we can't conceive of a world that doesn't have things that begin and end. It's like there has to be a beginning and there has to be an end. Or maybe at least there has to be a beginning. If there's no end, I could probably understand that. But like, who made God, or when did God come to be? You know, when did I or you or any of these worlds? It's like, no, the spiritual worlds, the first thing that you'll realize, the very first realization you'll have is that this is eternal. It never came into being, and there will never be a time where it ceases to be. And anyway, you just have to experience that yourself. Jay.
Okay, so this is so great. How
You want to keep reading? I'm sorry, please.
Just how this, like, that whole thing right there that you just said about like eternity. I mean, that's like, that's I don't know what you would call that, a mind-blowing thing, or like, I don't know what you would call that. That's like, that will shift your entire perception of reality. And to just wait a second and let that really sink in. You know, it's like, wow, okay, this is a concept. I guess on the level that we are on as human beings, where we have this touch with God, like he allows us to have these thoughts. He allows us to have these gifts, you know, and I guess there's kind of a trust thing, because it's like a father giving a child something, you know, like something to play with maybe, or something, you know. But he gives us this insight and this information, and he lets us know that he has no beginning and no end. He is just an eternal thing, an eternal. I can't even say thing. The whole thing is just eternal. I mean, to let that sink in, and to just think of that, about that for a moment, and then maybe think about that a little longer than just a moment. You know, I mean,
it's like, what are the implications of that? If you're an eternal soul and your consciousness always has continuity, or the continuity might be interrupted. Actually, that's really what it is the eternality. That eternal continuum simply gets interrupted when we enter into material life vis-a-vis time, right? But if you're eternal, and like you are eternally an individual, mam evam sho jiva loke, jiva bhuta sanatana, right? There are two key words in that that line of Sanskrit, chapter 15, text 7, amsha and sanatana, that you are eternally a part of God, or you are a part of God, and that sanatana, you are eternal. So if that's the case, it means that's a huge responsibility. that means that it's not the case that you are, okay, you might be insignificant quantitatively, you're a tiny microbe in the great cosmic soup, right? But there's nothing about your life that doesn't have meaning. I think, Jordan Peterson was speaking on this. I read this a year ago or so, or not, I'm sorry, I didn't read. I heard him talk about this about a year ago. That there's like two solutions that people have to their existentialism. Either that nothing matters or everything matters. It's like if you want to take the nihilist route, it saves you from a lot of stress, because hey, nothing matters. If I messed up, doesn't matter. But then that leaves you with having, this emptiness of not having any meaning, which is kind of a, shitty deal. But if everything matters, well, it's much more difficult, but hey, then you've got real meaning, and that's the actual fact, is there is real meaning.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I did.
And what's beautiful about that is like your mistakes don't really matter, though. It doesn't mean that everything you do is eternalized or immortalized. It means that there is a greater meaning. And this is something that Chaitanya Charan Prabhu talks about. Actually, it might have been a podcast that he did on Jordan Peterson. This was also a year ago, and I'm forgetting a lot of the details, but that there's a higher meaning, basically. That's the purpose of religion. It's like, it's okay, you make mistakes, but it's not all about you. It's kind of the idea. You can participate in the complete whole, and that gives great meaning. And that complete whole is perfect. Like Krishna's world, like we're going to read here in his book, like Krishna's world is perfect. His relationships are perfect. His reciprocation with you. And everything about him is perfect. And we can either choose to live in our own world and have our rasa with material life, or we can enter into his world and be a part of his life. And that gives incredible meaning to life.
Yeah.
And that is what will be eternalized or immortalized, is what you do in that mode. That's the transcendence. Whereas material, it's temporary. Your mistakes will perish, along with your body. Time will destroy all of that.
Yeah.
I don't know if that made sense.
No, absolutely. That makes absolute sense. Now we're at the 5-minute mark right now. I feel like we have covered a lot in 2 paragraphs. That was literally not even 1 page. And we're talking
Prabhupada put a lot in there,
yeah. And this is the Krishna book that we're reading from. This is just the preface of the Krishna book.
Yeah.
And it is so amazing, and I'm so grateful to.
And it's important, because once we understand these things, then we can actually enter into Krishna book. It's not a mundane story.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
It's giving us access to, as Kirtaneshwar said, the highest manifestation of divinity.
Yeah.
And that can be our inner worlds. Think about that.
Yeah.
It's not just that you've got a relationship with God. Wonderful. That's huge, actually. Out of many thousands of men, one may strive for perfection. But out of many of those who strive for perfection, how many actually attain it? How many are actually able to reside internally, right? And live in a world of perfection? Hardly one. Out of those, and Krishna says, out of thousands of those who have attained perfection, hardly one knows me in truth. Hardly one of them is Krishna conscious, is in Krishna's world. So it's a very, elevated thing, and we're getting direct access. Just hearing about Krishna, you are in. You've been given the VIP access. Then it's up to you how much you want to develop your Krishna consciousness. How much of that portrait do you want painted eternally on your soul? Like, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Let's read one or two more paragraphs, because I think they kind of tie in with what we were talking about, and then we can leave it there.
Okay.
Do you want to read in the 9th chapter?
Yeah. In the 9th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, the science of Krishna consciousness is called the king of all knowledge, the king of all confidential things, and the supreme science of transcendental realization. Yet we can directly experience the results of the science of Krishna consciousness because it is very easy to practice and is very pleasurable. Whatever percentage of Krishna consciousness we can perform will become an eternal asset to our life, for it is imperishable in all circumstances. It has now been actually proved that today's confused and frustrated younger generation in the Western countries can directly perceive the results of channeling the loving propensity towards Krishna alone.
It is said that although one executes severe austerities, penances, and sacrifices in his life, if he fails to awaken his dormant love for Krishna, then all his penances are to be considered useless. On the other hand, if one has awakened his dormant love for Krishna, then what is the use in executing austerities and penances unnecessarily? So Prabhupada says that in the Bhagavad Gita, and actually that's chapter 2, verse 40, 40 or 41. And you can read in the purport how he references the biblical saying, what profiteth a man if he gains the world but loses his soul?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
The same idea. Whatever we're doing in life, again, if we're failing to water the root of the tree, it's all for naught. Shrama eva hi kevalam, simply a waste of time. But if it's used, let's see, that's Vasudeva Bhagavati. No, it's the next one. Dharmasya hyapavargasya nartoyas cheha karmabi nartasya nindriya pritir. Anyway, I might be mixing the verses. But if you're awakening your dormant love for Krishna, then your life has been properly utilized. On the other hand, even if you do all of the greatest things in the world, if you fail to awaken your love for Krishna, then what is the use? You've got to let it go.
Yeah.
Yeah. Jai.
Yes. Well, thank you, Balaram, for taking the time out and doing this podcast.
Oh man, no, this is my great fortune. Thank you for engaging me.
Yeah. And thank everyone else and anyone who happens to have the patience to put up with us and watch us talk about Krishna book for an hour every weekend. Thank you, all of our viewers, for at least watching us and checking it out real quick. But
yeah, and any comments or feedback that you guys have or questions, please send them on in.
Yes.
Be very happy to hear from you.
Yeah, we really came into some very heavy subject matter today, and it will continue tomorrow. We will meet again, and we will read some more and have discussion and keep this this friendship and this sadhu sangha going. So thank you again. So let's close out with the Maha Mantra 3 times, and then that'll be it. Okay. Yes.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jai Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Hi. Yes. All right. I'll catch you later.
Haribol.